Welcome to the Natural History Cupboard. Come on in.
And welcome back to the Natural History Cupboard podcast, the place where the weird and wonderful parts of the natural world come together. I'm your host, Gareth, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Aaron. Aaron, what have you been doing? Hopefully more than last week.
Do you know what? I've done a lot more than last week, and yet I've not seen as much as I would have done, considering how much I've done a fair amount of walking and looking for things.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have seen has been pretty cool. So the other day, I came away having seen, I reckon it was 17, 18 buzzards
Nice.
all circling overhead. It's like almost like a scene from like Africa, except for not vultures, not sunny, not warm.
Yeah, it definitely hasn't been any of those things.
And then I've also been I also saw a red kite.
Nice.
That I've been. It's the same, or at least he's in the same area as the ones I was seeing last year. So I'm assuming it's the same one. Because they hold a territory, don't they? Or not? I don't think territory is the right word, but they have like a territory, for lack of more specific word. And also I was watching a starling murmuration, and it turned into the biggest murmuration that I've seen this year so far.
Nice.
It was huge.
Where was that?
This is just up the road, so let's call it South Moulton.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It wasn't. I mean, it was a little bit out of South Moulton, but yeah, more towards South Moulton end than Barnstaple end. But yeah, it was huge. By the way, I'm gonna cough through this episode. This episode is very much brought to you by Strepsils, and
give us that Strepsils money.
Hot water with honey and lemon mixed in. This murmuration was so huge, but when they decided to have a collective break, and they landed on the wires, the wires just turned like really thick black. It's the number of them on there.
Oh, I like it when that happens.
That was really cool. So yeah, it's been a very birdie week for me.
Always a good week, a birdie week.
Yeah, and thanks to Atta, my partner, I've got another friend on the old Merlin Bird ID app. So that's another, and they've got a little one too. So another child being exposed to the greatness that is birds.
Good. That's what I want to hear.
What about you?
Well, I am really struggling to think of anything. Actually, it's been a week that has not really been anything more than just sort of just work, I suppose. One of the days that the last Friday, actually, we had a staff training day, and one of the things that was put on offer was come and meet the animals, or the way it was billed was hug a bunny, of which we very quickly put a stop to that, going, no, there will be no bunny hugging. If people want to come to the centre, they are more than welcome to come to the centre, and they can meet some of the animals. There will be no hugging of bunnies. We do not hug bunnies here, which was a wonderful way of somebody clearly viewing how we do things. But we had a nice group of some of the other members of staff coming in, and I showed them around, and they got to see some of the animals up close. And yeah, it's just nice. They were thoroughly impressed. We had lots of different reptiles out and everything, and they got to see them up close, and everyone went away happy. And yeah,
very cool.
It's nice. It's really nice to be able to like share that with other people who work there who never normally get to see it. We tend to keep the doors locked all the time and stay out. It's quite nice and quiet. And anyway, but apart from that, I've not really done much this week. No, not really much. Other than maybe preparing my child for the ability to eventually go out in the sea or something like that. He's been learning how to swim.
Very cool.
It's been hit and miss, shall we say? Very hit and miss.
Young though, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, so we shall see how that goes. But,
Yeah, very good.
Shall we head into this week's news?
Yeah, let's do it.
It's the news!
Right, well, we're into this week's news. I'm going to start things off with an interesting one that probably gave the guy a bit of a shock. It's from the BBC. I felt a slimy texture brush my face. Man describes being swallowed by a whale. It wasn't so much as swallowed. It just,
a bit of an exaggeration.
it's not the best headline, if anything.
No.
It should have been man gets eaten by, or kayaker gets eaten or scooped up by humpback whale. So this is the rather interesting video that I'd recommend going and looking it up. It's a kayaker, Adrian Simancas, who was kayaking off the coast of Chile when a humpback whale just comes out of nowhere and just and he's gone. It obviously didn't eat him. It spat him back out about 10 seconds later. But the guy said that he felt that was it. That was his death. You know, he didn't really think there was much else. Came out completely unscathed. And basically, he had a very interesting, unique encounter. The thought is the whale was lunge feeding and he just got in the way, basically. So,
yeah.
I mean, that'd be one hell of an encounter with any kind of marine mammal, is getting that close to it.
Yeah. By the way, he wouldn't ever have actually been swallowed because a humpback whale's throat is about that big.
Yeah.
So he wasn't going anywhere. Is what I'm saying. So my first article comes to us from IFL Science. Now this is an old one actually. It goes back to September last year.
Okay.
But the reason I chose it is because for some reason it came up on my feed, and I thought it's an old one, but
It checks out.
it's an entertaining one. The headline is:
It's an old article, sir, but it checks out.
Why are people in Iceland throwing baby puffins off cliffs?
Because they just hate them.
Because they hate puffins. You might be wondering why I'm finding this so amusing. It's actually because it's a very heartwarming story of throwing babies. So grab your puffins, it's tossing time. That's the subheading.
That's how you do a headline.
Nobody tosses a puffin. Hang on. Don't tell the elf. Don't tell the seagull. There goes the news. Basically, in Iceland, in September is puffin season, when all the puffins are hatching and being born. And to make sure that they don't get confused by the lights in the city and fly towards the city when they're supposed to be flying out to sea, the locals basically go on, they collect the puffins, and then they throw them. I'm imagining personally from this birds like javelins.
I'm not getting like a nice tight sort of American football spiral on them, you know.
And they land on Lundy.
One hell of a
That's a hell of a throw, yeah. No, I imagine they probably grasp them
Gently,
like that and
yeah.
just gently let them. But it's basically to make sure that the puffins fly off in the right direction. So it's a lovely kind of effort to keep their local puffins alive and thriving.
Making sure they can fly first before throwing them.
Splash. Local Greenland sharks are well happy.
My next one, whilst you recover, comes from the Centre for Biological Diversity, which is actually a Facebook group, but they are surprisingly good when it comes to talking about North American wildlife and the situations they currently face, as will probably become evident over the next 4 years and probably ensuing years afterwards of the damage that has been done. They have put unelected Elon Musk, or the actual president of America, in his own words, feeding federal agencies into a wood chipper, which he has done with US AID the other week, which the effects of that are already being felt around the globe. whenever they don't agree with them, essentially launching a hostile private takeover of their country. At the Centre for Biological Diversity, we're especially concerned about protections for imperiled wildlife, public lands, air, and water quality. All are under threat from Trump and Musk and Doge employees ransacking federal programs and riding roughshod over the rule of law. Tell your representatives to stop the takeover. Basically, there's a link then that follows of trying to get that into all these different representatives, who can actually make some change at a government level. I mean, at this point, it's kind of unsure whether any kind of change will happen, but it'd be
Only
nice to see.
negative change.
It would be nice to see that representatives who you have elected. This is the American electoral system. We've got nothing to do with that here. It'd be nice to basically tell whoever's in charge how annoyed you are that your wildlife, your country is basically being ransacked by these weirdos.
Yeah, there's so much to say on Musk and Trump. It's just
we just don't have the time.
We don't have the time, and also, I've
or the mental
deliberately gone.
bandwidth.
Yeah, I've deliberately gone with a funny news story and two positive news stories because honestly, this whole year, the whole next 4 years, could be filled with negative news.
Yes.
So my next article comes to us from Good News Network, and we all need a bit of that.
Yep.
And the headline is Almost Extinct Caribbean Lizard Makes a Comeback After Island Restoration. So a tiny lizard found on one of the many little islands of the Caribbean has seen an increase of 1,500%
That's
in
pretty
its
good.
population. And this is just after a few years of restoration work on that island. So in 2018, researchers estimated that there were fewer than 100. So we're talking 6-7 years later, and there's an increase of 1,500%. So yeah, just 6 years later, we find 1,600 of them on this island. So that's really fantastic news.
It's not bad at all.
No.
So we'll go back to depressing news with me. I mean, my main article could be considered really depressing. But this one, ABC News Australia, girl bitten by dingo on Kagari beach on Fraser Island, not Fraser Island. That would be a very different thing. Whilst fishing with large family group. Essentially, a video has come out of a young dingo coming up and biting a young girl as she's standing there on the beach, basically highlighting the danger that these animals actually pose to people if you are walking up to dingoes. And Fraser Island has always been known for its dingo populations and also being known for having beaches where tourists like to go to. These are not pet dogs. These are wild animals. And in the video, the dingo is basically reacting to this young girl being afraid, which just like, I mean, you being having done dog training, Aaron, you'll know that dogs react to your behavior as much as anything else. And you can see that from the behavior that the girl is, she's afraid, she's moving backwards, but she's moving in an erratic motion. And that makes the dingo go in for a bit of a nip on her leg, which could potentially have got a lot worse. What the authorities recommend that you do if you are going to Fraser Island is you carry what's called a dingo stick, which is basically just a stick to keep with you to help keep them at bay. Which
similar concept to a chav wampa.
Yeah, but you're not meant to hit the dingo. You're not meant to do anything.
Oh, right, okay. So just to keep it at a distance.
Just to basically help protect you. And, it's the same sort of things that people are told in parts of the world where you've got bears or tigers or anything like that. Don't approach these animals. Don't put yourself in a position where you are going to be seen as something worthy of interacting with. I mean, dogs are smart animals and they'll figure things out pretty quickly. And these are wild animals, but they have been around people, so they don't have the fear that, say, a dingo would have in the outback. Where it might see one person who might take a pot shot at it with a gun. These are animals that are used to people, and the more people interact with them in a negative way, either leaving food or basically getting as close to them as possible, the chances for negative interactions really increase. So yeah.
My next article comes to us from Discover Wildlife, and the headline is, "This does not look like normal hunting behaviour. Remarkable footage shows orcas hunting in a way never filmed before." So basically, the pod of orcas was filmed. It looks like they're playing with their food. They're not. What actually happened
Is this them doing the usual thing where they get a seal and launch it out of the water?
it does involve a seal, but no. Basically, a mum with some young calves basically was very gently gripped the tail of a seal and dragged it off of its little ice float. And it was basically teaching the youngsters
Here,
how
kids,
to
come
do it.
and torture this seal.
And then lets it go. So I recommend watching the footage. The footage
Yeah.
is really cool. Just to see a little bit of interest in animal behaviour, see
Mm.
skills being passed down generationally. But yeah, it's cool. So yeah, that'll just about do it for the news articles this week. Apart from the main topic, which is with Gareth this week.
Yep.
What have you got for us?
So this comes from a variety of different news sources because it's been, shall we say, a good topic of discussion in various different circles.
Right.
We're all gonna die.
Oh yes, I know exactly where this is going.
And it's not the current American president that's brought this particular panic on. No, actually, we're not going to die. I mean, there's a chance that some people might die. It's the
You're
rather
not making it better.
No, I'm not making it better. No, I'm not
Is it
making it more
me?
appealing. So this is the news that a meteorite or an asteroid is heading towards Earth potentially. Which, if you've been, like I say, watching the news of late, you'll have seen that this particular one has an increased chance of hitting the planet. Now, this isn't going to be sort of, we're not thinking, do we need to send Bruce Willis up there now with a ragtag bunch of oil drillers to to do something? I'm not even sure. I mean, that film is it's interesting. It's interesting to say the least. I don't know which I prefer, Deep Impact or Armageddon.
Armageddon was definitely the more popular one.
It's it's the funnier of the two, but Deep Impact is probably the more accurate of the two. So it was back in that time period where you had two films coming out that would be identical, Bugs Life and Ants and
was it the volcano? One was called Volcano, and I remember the subheading was "The Coast is Toast."
And then Dante's Peak. You know what? Actually, I really like both those films.
Yeah,
Volcano's the one with Tommy Lee Jones,
Tommy
and
Jones,
one of them is Pierce Brosnan in Dante's Peak.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's very much off the topic there. So NASA has upgraded the risk of an asteroid known as 2024 YR4. Very catchy. It's basically because it was discovered in 2024.
Yeah, we covered. Do you remember we covered this? With comets, how they name them? Yeah,
it was discovered on the 23rd, 24th of December last year. So they've been tracking it for quite a while.
I'm surprised they didn't call it Rudolph.
Well, might come back to bite us if that was the case. But chances of this particular asteroid hitting Earth has increased. Now, that isn't to say that it's increased to a point where you should be panicking and digging a hole in your garden. We shouldn't be prepping just yet. But it's increased from 2% to 2.6%. Doesn't sound drastic, but this is essentially a 1 in 38 chance now. So, if you were playing the lottery and you've got a 1 in 38 chance of winning, those are pretty good odds. So, I'm trying to make it lighthearted. So this is the highest odds yet of a collision. Astronomers discovered the asteroid that it was basically heading towards Earth in December, and it's been the focus of telescopes at the European Space Agency for quite a while now. Now, I say December is if it's going to hit in 2032, it will hit somewhere, they reckon, on the 22nd of December. And someone has managed to predict sort of a line where it'll hit. And from what I've read from various different people who've been talking about this of late, is it's either going to hit on this line that will cross sort of from Panama, Costa Rica. If you draw a line, a slightly curved line as well, because you've got to take into account the shape of the Earth, across west and then to East Africa, somewhere sort of around the equator.
Yeah.
So Congo, and Benin, that sort of way, stretching across maybe Kenya, Malawi, maybe a bit too further south than Malawi, but my African geography is a bit off. Across to parts of India and Sri Lanka, right across. And the furthest point it's reckoning that this will head is somewhere out towards Osaka in Japan.
Yeah.
And the thought is that that's the only major city that sits on this line that's been drawn so far. And there's a brilliant YouTube video I watched on it the other day where someone basically took like a simulator that you can get that shows the level of impact that it would create.
That's where you go.
Not doing it as like a game thing, but no, showing the blast. Basically, this is
If
it's
an asteroid was to hypothetically land here, how much Power Ranger building level flattening?
yeah. I mean, yeah, it'd be a good level of Power Ranger if it was to hit the center of Osaka for some absurd reason. If that asteroid has got like it's got exact measurements of where it's going to hit and hit the center of Osaka, basically a good majority of it for about 20 miles out is getting obliterated. The way they put it is that the blast is 50 megatons, so bigger than the bomb that flattened Hiroshima.
That's
and that.
correct, yeah.
But the way that they've said it, everyone's tried to make it sound as big as they possibly can. It's actually really quite a small impact on the scale of asteroids that have hit the Earth. This is not a big asteroid compared to some of the ones that have been, that have hit the Earth essentially in various different places. The sort of closest I think someone gave it was the Tunguska blast in northern Russia, which no one knew about or knew where it was for almost, I think, 80 years, because it hit in Siberia, in one of the most remote parts of Siberia, Tunguska. Yeah. And people knew about it because they'd heard the blast, because it was that big. And then they only found out about it after people traveling there and finding these dead trees all, flattened in the area with new trees growing up in between. So, it's one of those impacts that can have a huge devastating effect if it was to hit. The one thing that this particular YouTube channel was going on about is saying there's a part of them that's also morbidly curious at the thought of seeing something like that. And I've got to remember, I share a little bit of that morbid curiosity of if this thing were to hit in the middle of the desert, middle of the Sahara Desert, for instance, and we know in advance, we've predicted it all down. Imagine watching that, because you.
I see. So it you're talking about it hypothetically hitting a place that is as remote and uninhabited as possible, and we all know about it, so we can all sit back at a safe distance and watch.
Everyone, get your deck chair out, get your sunglasses. We'll all park up on a hill. You can have all the TV cameras.
I can get behind that, but I don't know why. I should know you better, but
I don't want to see people get.
I did think that you were saying
the middle of downtown Osaka. Yeah, I've got a real hatred for that place.
With Leo Beast curiosity and seeing how that would work out. Well, I think I can tell you how that would work out, Gareth. Not very well.
Well, no, but
let's ask dinosaurs.
But it's nowhere near that size. That was an asteroid the size of New York hitting the Earth. So this thing is nowhere near close to that size.
And that reminds me, I'd love to do a short video on YouTube or TikTok for us explaining the ferocious energy of that asteroid.
Yeah.
Because it is fascinating. Like the equivalence in our nuclear weaponry tech it's frightening.
Well. This one, they reckon, is about the size of the large, like the blast equivalent. The energy that would be released would be over just the largest nuclear bomb that's ever been made, the Tsar bomber. So they reckon it would be over that sort of megatonnage of explosive force. But obviously, and this is what I loved when I was listening to people talking about this on a news article, they're going, but there'll be no radiation, right? Well, yes, of course. It's not radioactive. If it was, it's immaterial, really.
There's a different type. That was the next point I was going to come on to, is that the impact I'm sure if it landed on a village, town, or city, people would disagree with me. But the impact itself is not usually the most devastating
No.
part of it. It's the after effect of it. What I would like to go through in this video that I'd love to do is actually how the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. It was written in history at the formation of our solar system. It was just hanging out there, just outside the periphery. And it was, in the end, in the right position for Jupiter's gravitational pull to lure it in, and then the sun's gravitational pull to pull it closer.
Yeah.
And then the moon was just out the way for it to bypass that defense system. And then obviously the Earth had spun to a degree where the Gulf, what is now the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf
sorry.
of Mexico,
It's not.
the Gulf of Mexico, by the way.
Yeah.
The Gulf of Mexico was facing it, hitting there, and it was the rock that was underneath the Gulf of Mexico that actually was one of the reasons why we entered that, or that our planet at
Yeah.
that time entered what they call, is it an asteroid winter, or what's it called?
Global
Impact winter.
Yeah.
An impact winter. And those things are morbidly fascinating. So I mean, this isn't anywhere near the size of that, but still, I imagine, depending on where it hit, there would be some sort of impact fallout from it.
Well, interestingly enough, they've actually drawn up 2 possible scenarios.
Oh yeah.
So one scenario, it all depends on observations of this object over the next year or so, over the next couple of months, actually. And the European Space Agency have been able to request use of the James Webb Telescope to be able to get better readings, which needs to happen.
Yeah.
To be able to get a better idea of what this rock is going to do. And they've come up with 2 scenarios, supposedly. One is we basically do what we've done in the past, which we've done once now, where we put a satellite up towards it and we knock it off course.
Yeah, of course.
Using the analogy of, playing pool, you just knock it on the side and that sends its trajectory off.
Yeah.
Which would be the ideal situation, and it just flies off into space and we don't see it again. The second scenario is if it was to hit and they've drawn up that line, basically evacuating people from an area, which I actually think would be the harder of the 2 jobs in some ways. It's almost easier for a group of really specialized, really focused people to be able to launch a mission into space than it is to get governments around the world to agree with each other, where entire population centers would be able to go for a period of time. Because in theory, if it were to hit and wipe out a region, for instance, take India, for example, if it was to hit somewhere in central, India, for example, those people could be moved out of the area and could potentially be housed in and around surrounding communities and could go back relatively soon. But that's a lot of logistical footwork for a government, even just one government, to be able to pull off, let alone if it was, say, straddling parts of Africa, for instance, or Southeast Asia, where there are multiple countries in quite close proximity to each other, which have vastly different governmental organizations, and some of them don't get on with each other. You end up with this sort of, well, I'm not taking them, you're not taking them, I'm not taking them. Oh, it's hit. Okay.
You would hope that something like, in imminent doom would unify people.
You'd think so.
But it's not always the case.
No.
And another problem, which is going to be overlooked until it's too late, unfortunately, is that we currently have a trend in politicians that are in power and going to be coming to power. And this isn't an American unique thing. This is Britain too, and many other countries. This trend of science denialism.
Yeah.
People refuse to believe that the climate is a cause for concern, and that has been a problem for decades.
Yeah.
The fact that this asteroid's just turned up, it's going to be all those experts.
Well, I would highly recommend everyone to go and watch a film that came out a couple of years ago called Don't Look Up.
Brilliant film.
It's so good, and it hits the nail on the head perfectly. Exactly what you're saying. stop what you're doing now. Actually, no, wait until the end of the episode, then go and watch Don't Look Up, because
Yeah.
it's hits the nail on the
Very,
head.
very, very good film. And it perfectly explains our society and
Scary.
its approach to a cataclysmic asteroid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a comedy, but it is
it-
very close
it's
to
a comedy
reality.
with a message.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, I mean, in theory, in the next couple of months, we should have a better idea, a better ability to sort this out. But we're at a point now in history. It may seem scary, but we're at a point in history where we can actually detect these things. 50 years ago, if this asteroid was coming and was going to hit, say, downtown Osaka, because that's the one we've gone with so far for this, we wouldn't know until Osaka's gone. And
someone would see it on a garden telescope.
yeah,
And
basically.
that's not enough time to do anything.
No.
In fact, speaking of not enough time to do it, you were saying about a couple months. The one thing that I do understand about this is that they actually have these couple of months. After that window passes, they're not going to see it again until 2028.
Yeah.
And they've said that is too late. If it needs to be
Altered,
course corrected, or indeed nuked, that was another option that was brought up.
That's something we're not short on.
Yeah. Maybe that's a way to solve that problem as well. Get rid of them all on that. But if they need to do anything like that, they have to decide it in the next coming months. They can't, once it disappears out of view, they then can't make that decision anymore. The next time we see it, 2028, it's too late to do anything about it.
Well, this is why I've been a firm believer that we should have Starfleet by now. We should have put our we should have built warp drives by now. We should be launching the Enterprise and just blasting out in the atmosphere, or at least a Death Star. I don't know.
So you convert the moon into Death Star.
I think we should build a Death Star. Excellent. Oh, that's Mr. Burns, isn't it? Good, Anakin. Shall we move on into our creature feature for this week?
You pay the ultimate price for your lack of vision.
It's the creature feature.
Right, well, we're into this week's creature feature. Aaron, what are we looking at this week?
Well, we've mentioned a veritable legion of animals in recent weeks that could vie for our consideration of animals that have either the best patterns, the brightest colours, or the oddest looking. Yeah. Just in recent weeks, we've asked questions relating to that kind of topic. But this pint-sized critter could be a justifiable entry for if there's anyone wanting to enter them into any of those aforementioned categories, as far as I'm concerned. Because this week we're looking at the eastern collared lizard, also known as the common collared lizard and the Oklahoma collared lizard. Got those words out in the end. They weren't even scientific binomial names. I struggled. And they do have a funny nickname, which we'll touch on in a bit. But basically, we're going to go on a bit of a narrative journey this week.
Okay.
I promised that I don't know if I promised, but I'm pretty sure I didn't set any of this up to kill you this week.
It's always nice when you don't.
Good. But our story takes place in the southern United States of America and northern Mexico. And here, spreading from the Ozark mountain range to western Arizona, the eastern collared lizard takes up residence in the states of Arizona, Arkansas, Colorado, Kansas, Missouri, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Texas, and then, of course, like I said, the actual country of Mexico. Here in the geographical stronghold of the South Central Wild West, the wind howling through the craggy valleys and dusty canyons was once confused for the lizard's call. And that's where that funny, I know, and that's where the funny nickname comes from, because it actually earned them the name Mountain Boomer.
I mean,
all right, Boomer.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. Yep. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how they got their nickname, Mountain Boomer, despite the fact that this lizard is actually pretty much next to silent,
like most lizards.
Like most lizards, yeah. But for the moment, activity across the peaks and plains is starting to wind down. It's mid-July, and in a burrow under a rock heated by the summer sun, an exciting development is about to take place. A clutch of 5 eggs is hatching.
No.
Yeah, one of which is, of course, Gareth.
Okay.
Welcome to the world, young Gareth, the eastern-collared mountain boomer.
I'm just going to go out and shout. Yep.
Shout into the wind.
Yeah.
That's a Pocahontas song.
I
I'm
feel
sure.
like that most of the time, just shouting into the.
So, Gareth, warm-up question: how long do you think you've been developing for?
See, I know remarkably nothing about these lizards, so this could be
I'm
a
actually
total guess.
surprised that you have. Yeah, you admit yourself you have next to no interest in this lizard.
Not next to no interest. I just think I don't know. It doesn't stand out in my mind in a lot of ways as one that's grabbed my attention. I've sort of seen it and thought, oh, it's a nice looking lizard.
Have you ever seen one in the flesh?
No,
No,
if I
don't think
have,
I
I mean, I may have, but I think I may have just passed it by.
Which is odd when we get onto their appearance. That's a bit odd, but yeah.
I think the egg itself has probably been incubating for 3-4 weeks.
3 or 4 weeks. So you're giving it about 28 days, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I set this up so you didn't die, but you've hatched yourself prematurely.
Fair enough. There was always a risk of that.
Dead right out the gate.
It's going well. It's going well.
I was trying to be so nice when I wrote these questions for you. No, most clutches number between 4 and 6 eggs, and they can be incubated for between 50 to 100 days.
That's quite a decent length of time.
So yeah, that's a decent amount of time. And 5 eggs is actually that's a pretty healthy clutch.
Yeah.
For 28 days, perhaps not so healthy.
No.
But we're just going to assume that we'll go on the low side, and we'll just assume that you.
It's a leap year. A leap year, month,
days.
day, week. Yeah.
So in all likelihood, because of the social behaviours and the breeding behaviours that go on with these animals, and the time of year that they lay their clutches, the fact that you're hatching now, it probably means that your mum would have been an older, larger female, as they tend to have more breeding
about my mother.
success.
Reptile or not.
Your mother's so fat; she had 3 clutches that year.
Whoa!
My God, this feature's gone off the rails already. Gareth's dead, and we resorted to your mother jokes. Anyway, 50 days. After 50 days, Gareth has broken free of his egg and is on the move. Mum has no maternal instinct whatsoever, as is often the case. So you are very much independent on your own and able to survive on your own, very much so. Professor, writhing and wrestling your way out of an egg, only to have to climb up and out of the burrow that you've been laid in, has expended a fair amount of energy. So what's the first port of call for you this morning? What are you going to get up to?
Well, it depends on the temperature, I suppose, of the burrow, or the sort of egg chamber. If it was warm enough, you'd be active enough. You'd be looking for something to eat, so presumably some sort of small insect. If not, you'd probably be going to try and find somewhere to bask and build up a little bit of, energy.
I didn't want to get too specific for you and trip you up this early, so I did just say.
Trip me up on the first question.
I completely didn't think you tripped on that. But I have said your answer is perfectly good. So you'd be basking and then breakfasting. So you position yourself upon a rock, elevating you out of the way of any shade, or out of the way of any kind of cover or foliage, so that you can catch as much of the sun's rays as possible. At this stage, your dull kind of earthy brown coloration, broken up by the darker brown markings, disguises you really well amongst the dirt, as you basically thermoregulate to increase your core temperature, as you know, and boost metabolism. And it's at this moment that something catches your eye. Now, do you think that might be a colourful and juicy plant matter, or the rapid movement of invertebrates?
Well, they're an agama, aren't they?
You'll get no cheats from me.
Okay, well, I'm going on the assumption that they're a type of agamid, which would mean that if, like bearded dragons, they're pretty much all insect eater until they're older. So I'm going to go looking for insects, but I don't think they'd say no to something like that. But predominantly insect.
Yeah. So yeah, your lizard eyes have seen or caught with the excellent vision that these guys actually have. Beetles, cicadas, crickets, grasshoppers, moths, and spiders. All of those are kind of on the menu as you hunt. Excuse me. And actually, for most of your life, you're an obligate carnivore in
Okay.
this case.
Yeah.
Now they do occasionally take a tiny bit of plant matter, but it's very much not of interest to them. You have sharp, pointed teeth, and with those, and the accompanying kind of crushing jaw musculature, inverts are definitely your speciality. Although you will also, as you grow up, eat other things such as snakes and even other lizards.
Oh, no.
So yeah, and at your size, and with that currently dull color palette across your scales, it's all too easy to close the ground between you and your first meal. And you are an aggressive feeder. The local invertebrates whisper your presence in fearful, hushed tones.
As they hear the calls on the wind.
They call you Professor Baba Yaga or the Boogeyman.
Fair
or
enough.
even Invert's Bane. They would call you that if they had the mastery of our speech, that is. Which they don't.
Or familiar with Tolkien's lore.
Yeah, or familiar
Or
with Tolkien's lore.
Polish.
Well, I was going with John Wick with Baba Yaga, but yes, you're quite right. East European kind of folklore.
Yeah, that's the words I was looking for.
Anyway, this activity of hunting these insects and predating upon them is actually just as fulfilling to the ecosystem as it is to your health. Because not only is Gareth, our eastern collared lizard, controlling insect populations, but by eating some of the dietary selection the lizard is consuming, Gareth is consuming, he is actually ingesting, without choosing to, plant seeds that have been eaten by your prey. And so actually, as you wander about on patrol of your territory and you defecate in certain areas, you are actually helping the spread of plant life. You are the south central US's very own pint-sized gardener.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah. So yeah, in doing so, like I say, you're a seed dispersal unit, and there's a very important ecological role for you to fill. But July soon becomes August, and it's time to switch up your activities. So, what do you think is next on the agenda for you as we get into August?
Well, I'm only like a month old. So, well, I can't imagine there's been much breeding at this point. So possibly expanding or maintaining a territory and just building up and growing as much as possible.
Well, I'm glad that you answered that way, because it wasn't really to catch up. It's just that it's always nice when I get to, excuse me,
see where my mind goes.
Yes, but also I get to learn a lot from some of the weird and wonderful animals that you bring to this podcast, whereas a lot of my ones are ones that you also kind of know about. It may surprise you and some of our listeners to learn that actually August is the start of the hibernation season for this species, or rather the brumation season. Yeah, they brumate
Makes
for
sense.
a long time, a really long time. So yeah, there is a reason why obligate carnivory is the modus operandi for these fantastic little land dragons. Plant matter just cannot sustain their body weight maintenance for the length of time that they hibernate, or rather again brumate, and the energy that's exerted for what comes after when they wake up from hibernation. So we'll leave Gareth here for a bit, bedding down. Yeah, bedding down in the Wild West for a long nap and a successful first year of life. And we'll return.
I'm not saying no, but I would love a nap.
A nice long nap.
I could go with that. Yeah.
Well, we'll return to you when you wake up to your second year of life. So we're going to actually skip your entire first year of life in the American Expanse. So Gareth, whilst your lizard counterpart is having the nap of the lifetime, a couple of quick questions. Firstly, what ability has the eastern collared lizard specced into? And as I say, try to focus on ability and not appearance here.
Ability. Well, I'm going to assume it can drop its tail, but is that where you're going with that?
It's not where I'm going with that.
I mean,
That's one of my least favorite things about certain groups of lizards is that they can drop their tail.
why?
No, I've never really liked it. It's never really vibed with me. It's not gross. I understand its purpose. I'm perfectly happy with it and comfortable with it. But I just kind of look at it and just think like, no.
Fair enough.
Why didn't like of all the things that you could do, like rattlesnakes have evolved to keep a little nodules of dead shed skin to make a rattle out of. Stegosaurus had thagomisers.
Yeah.
You just drop your tail. It's a little bit silly, really. I feel. No, it's not silly. Actually, it's really important. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's never really. It's a little bit meh. It's a little bit meh.
Okay.
But no, that's not the ability.
Well, they don't have the ability to squirt blood, as far as I'm aware, from their
No.
eyes, which horned lizards can do, which
Mhm.
share the same environment.
Yeah.
I want to say running on two legs, perhaps.
Very good. I was wondering if you were going to get it.
Well, there's a few
Nice
lizards.
process of elimination.
There's
there.
a few lizards that can do it, and I was just thinking that that's possibly one of them.
Yeah. So speed, to be specific, this species may well be the fastest lizard in the southwestern United States.
Nice.
It can reach speeds of up to 15 mile per hour. I think the record that they set was an individual hitting 16 mile per hour, but I couldn't find many entries on that, so I went with 15 because I found a lot of.
What happens if they get to 88?
mile per hour?
Yeah.
Into the next universe. Yeah, they end up in I don't know, Miles Morales' universe. Yeah, or the Flash meeting the other Flash. Anyway, tangent. Now, when they do so, when they run at these speeds, they actually raise, as Gareth alluded to, they raise the front of their bodies up near, and basically they almost near lean back into those hind legs, affording them the astonishing ability, like Gareth said, that a few others in their lineage have to run bipedally. So they can actually.
I bet you it's not as comedic as a frilled lizard when it runs on two legs.
because they've got that nice frill. I will say that the eastern collar lizards running on four legs is quite funny because the back legs do a little bit of like a cow thing where they, a little bit
hang out at the sides.
Crazy legs, yeah. Secondly, Gareth, and a bit of a random one, where do you think the IUCN places you in terms of conservation considerations?
Not knowing much about this species.
Excuse me.
Probably, I'm gonna play it on the safe side because that's quite a large range, and I get the feeling it's probably the same as when we tend to lump most of Europe as one thing. So I'm going to say least concerned or vulnerable or something.
Yeah, you're right. Least concern. So, despite being a very small species and very abundant in population, the brumation period necessary to activate the reproductive hormones has largely kept your kind from being exploited by the pet trade. So you're safe from that. It also seems to have actually put pressure on the pet trade to really hone the husbandry for your species to such an extent that your captive counterparts are both difficult to source and often well catered to by knowledgeable breeders. All the ones that I found in the UK, don't quote me, but they seem, because it might not be telling the truth.
Yeah,
but they seem to be from captive stock that comes from America, and America has a very good captive stock too. But there doesn't seem to be much motivation to go out and wild catch these things, partially because this brumation period makes breeding them so challenging. So you may as well just keep the ones they got and see how they do. They don't. Obviously, most people are going to go for bearded dragons and such, which are far easier to cater to. You also don't seem to suffer too much from hunting nor poaching, and environmental pressures, for the most part, seem to be less stressful in many of the habitats on which you thrive. And the species seems to be numerous amongst human settlements too. In fact, a couple of videos that I've seen of these guys have been amongst human settlement in towns. So a level of adaptability is in play here too. Of course, there's only so much adaptability will help you when you've got an absolute crazy lunatic in charge of the country who
Well,
is very keen to wipe everything out. So good luck with that, eastern collared lizards. Speaking of habitats, we've mentioned where your story takes place, but not what this region actually looks like. It's surprisingly varied. Now, whilst rocky limestone habitats such as cliff faces, outcrops, crags, and rock formations all provide the perfect habitat within their cracks, the lizard is known to do just as well on the grassy plains. And for that reason, they share their world, not necessarily their habitat, but they share their world with a hugely impressive array of species. And again, I'm about to list them off as best I can. Not necessarily in the same habitats, but certainly in the same range. There's a lot of crossover. So just to
and you've done them in alphabetical order.
Well, I did, and then I gave up on alphabetical order when I got to like so many. So yeah, you've got American badger, American pika, American short-tailed shrew, big brown bat, which is an awesome name.
Wow, that just sounds like so. What's that over there? Oh, it's a big brown bat.
Black-footed ferret, black-tailed prairie dog, bobolink, cave salamander, corvids. It's a bird.
Ah.
Yeah, but very cool bird, actually. Probably worthy of a creature feature. Corvids, coyote, desert cottontail rabbit, eastern mole, fox squirrel, golden mantled ground squirrel, grey wolf, leash shrew, lesser prairie chicken, little brown bat. Yeah, the big brown bat.
Big brown bat, little brown bat. Yep.
Meadow vole, Mexican Mexican free-tailed bat, mice, moose, mountain cottontail rabbit, mule deer, nine-banded armadillo, peregrine falcon, pronghorn, raccoon, red fox, silver-haired bat, as opposed to the silver-haired fox. Silver-haired bat, snowy plover, southern bog lemon.
Love the sound of that one.
Yep. Southwestern red squirrel, Strecker's chorus frog, swift fox, Virginia opossum, Virginia rail, western grotto salamander, white-tailed jackrabbit, woodland vole, yellow-bellied marmot, hispid pocket mouse, meadow jumping mouse, plains harvest mouse, deer mouse, hispid cotton rat, eastern wood rat, marsh rice rat, plains pocket gopher, southern flying squirrel, eastern grey squirrel, eastern chipmunk, 13-line ground squirrel, woodchuck, eastern cottontail, spotted skunk, striped skunk, long-tailed weasel, American mink, river otter, grey fox, coyote, American black bear, cougar, bobcat, white-tailed deer, bison, elk, alligator, quails, doves, cardinals, bald eagles, red-tailed hawks, pheasants, and honestly, way more species.
You're basically listing every species in the southern half of the United States.
Pretty much. The point is, if you want to see the fantastically biodiverse, the beautifully adorned kind of wildlife of American biodiversity from North America, you do yourself a great advantage by starting in the States where the eastern collared lizards range.
Sounds like a good list of animals.
If you go there, honestly, there are so many more. We didn't even get into insects and all of. If you want to see American biodiversity, American wildlife in like as much and as varied as possible, it seems like that's the place to go. But it is quite a big range, to be fair. Anyway, harkening back to my opening statement, why is an eastern collared lizard a suitable candidate for the categories such as best patterns, prettiest colours, or oddest look? I've already said that, Gareth, you are a very drab-looking animal now.
I mean, I could say I'm a rather drab-looking animal, yeah.
And also, females are very drab-looking as far as lizards go. Well, we are now going to return to Gareth, the eastern collared lizard, after one of those time jumps that are all the rage in television right now. House of the Dragon had one, Andor will have at least two. Hollywood loves a time jump, and so we're going to have a time jump here. So imagine, if you will, that sometime between Gareth's first hibernation period, where we left him, and this moment in time, the start of his second breeding season,
You could just go with the many years later.
many years later, Gareth has tripped and fallen and landed into someone's collection of Warhammer paints, and he has come out of this ordeal on the other side, looking like he was sporting the Canary Islands flag over his scales. This essentially is the look of the eastern collared lizard. They can reach nearly 38 centimeters, so 15 inches long, and are equipped with incredibly strong limbs that help them with the climbing, the claws as well, obviously, help them with the climbing over their rugged terrain. The rear pair being particularly disproportionate in length. And speaking of disproportionate, that head. They have a disproportionately large, robust head.
Large and round, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Complete with incredibly strong jaws. And it's used very much like a battering ram when being challenged. So far, nothing really stands out, right? I'm talking about a lizard that's probably the length of my forearm, maybe a little bit longer than my forearm, with a slightly disproportionate pair of back legs and head. Well, the lizard might be small, but the appearance of the males is loud enough to more than compensate. As Gareth reaches the surface of his brumation den, sunlight hits him, his proud self. Gone are the drab, dull, earthy tones of your immaturity, and in their place, the body boasts a light electric blue base color. Yeah, exactly like that, with yellow bands along the torso. Now you don't have yellow bands, but you've got a yellow
one
band.
there, yeah.
And white spots covering the body as if borrowed from a whale shark. The body and the head are distanced by a muscular neck, flashing contrasting black and white bands, which you don't.
I don't have a muscular neck, no.
And no, I meant the colours. But
oh, right.
And the oversized head.
No.
Is pale yellow with an angry yellow shade on the throat. They are absolutely stunning in colour and in pattern, and I think Drew's artwork does wonders to showcase this. Now, the odd part of this appearance is how a lizard sporting this bright combination of colours manages to hide itself from predators and prey alike in the overwhelmingly red-based natural surroundings.
True.
The answer is simple, but impressive. They can change colour, or at least they can change shades. They can actively use the pigmentation in their skin to lighten and darken the colour across their scales and hide them better amongst their surroundings.
Yeah.
Some of the animals likely to predate on our little blue and gold friends, by the way, are things like wild canid species, birds of prey, and snakes. So you are particularly going to want to be careful of things like coyotes and bald eagles, that kind of. Well, maybe not bald eagles; they're more fishing.
Yeah.
But yeah, birds of prey nonetheless. So Gareth, you've emerged not just bigger but more colourful too. You'll be on the hunt for food now, snagging much the same morsels as before, but as I alluded to earlier, you'll have the additions of young reptiles, snakes, and other lizards alike. But food isn't the only thing on your mind. It's now mating season, but this can be a challenging time for such an antisocial species. Male eastern collared lizards, such as Gareth, are hostile and territorial to the extreme. I feel unsafe on this sofa with them. They'll defend their patch, or in this case, their sofa, through actively patrolling their lands and displaying when they see intruders and chasing off rivals. All in the service of being the only male to be able to breed with the females within your jurisdiction. Unfortunately, Gareth, you've spotted an intruder. Now, what's your strategy here, do you think? How are you going to display to him, as I said?
Well, if it's anything like, I mean, I'm basing a lot of this on bearded dragons and iguanas and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, good
analogues, I suppose. So probably you'd be you'd probably have your little rock, your little station or log or something that gives you a good amount of basking spot,
Yeah,
but also allows you to survey your
vantage
area.
point.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be a case of head bobbing or sort of flashing sort of some part of your body,
Mhm.
and then increasing the rate of doing that if the animal is getting closer and hasn't really taken the visual warning.
Yep.
If that doesn't work, then the last resort, I'm guessing, is chasing after and trying to bite toes and tails and things.
Yeah, that's a pretty good direction to go with. So your display starts at a distance, like you said, with head bobbing, but also push-ups.
Yeah.
This animal's known for doing push-ups. Now your rival isn't backing down, and he's gaining ground. So you've pretty much answered this question already. You're going to continue to do more of the same
Mm.
in terms of display until the close proximity and the gall of this rival becomes intolerable.
Off my
to you.
land.
The unmitigated gall. At which point you'll charge him, like you say, give in chase and aim in to use your huge head as a battering ram and maybe get a nip in there. Um, the tail can also be used to lash out at rivals, though the tail, as we've already discussed, can be dropped, so it's unlikely to be employed unless absolutely necessary. Luckily, you won't have to take this further. A cocky young upstart is indeed younger and smaller than you, and he runs. This is actually especially lucky for him. You have the larger body size, particularly the muscular head and jaws. He probably wouldn't have made it out in one piece. These guys will
Tear 'em to
fight to the
pieces.
death. In fact, it's a common problem with people in captivity who don't know what they're doing when they go into a pet shop looking for these guys. They want the colourful ones.
Yeah.
The females aren't colourful, so they buy the males. The males will kill each other.
Nice.
Yeah, so not the way to go. Now, April has been and gone. May is fast upon you. A period of courtship now commences. And as a polygamous species, you'll be trying to impress the local or your local harem of females. This is a very different social affair to chasing off rivals. So, how do you proceed this time?
Well, I would actually go with it if it's anything like Bearded Dragons. It's the same sort of behavior.
Well, yeah, well
It's
done.
pretty much just going, "Hey, I am big and scary and tough and imposing, but hey, look how big and tough and scary and imposing I am."
Yeah,
Brr.
you've skipped a step, but you are correct. So just to fill in the gap there, to begin with, you're going to occupy yourself with spending time kind of laying down a well-resourced territory, making sure there's a lot of opportunity in
Yeah.
your land. Females aren't just judging your body size or your colorfulness; they're also looking to see which mate can provide the best opportunities for shelter and for feeding, should they align themselves to him or to you. You'll achieve setting down a territory by scent spraying along your regular patrol routes. Now, the next step is where you with what you were talking about. It's essentially the same as a rival defense display. You'll get within a body length measurement of a chosen female. You'll bob your head and you'll perform your push-ups to try and entice her to mate with you. And you'll even throw in some limb movements, some limb-based
Oh, the
dance
old
moves. Yeah, a little bit of raising, a little bit of flexing.
one of the best things a bearded dragon can do is that.
Yeah, it's very entertaining to watch. Yeah, you may even extend your dewlap.
Oof.
Yeah, you may even go that far. Now, if she is receptive, she may choose to extend her dewlap too. And so we have all the dewlaps
It's a
extended.
full dewlap
It's
session.
a dewlap display, but for the most part, acceptance is signalled by her raising her tail. At which point, you'll mate, and then once that's complete, you'll slowly walk away and extend in circles as you part ways.
Fair enough.
Ah. Now, Gareth, you'll head out probably to hunt, but the female will lay her eggs or your combined eggs about 2 weeks after your meeting, and Gareth's story will go on through them. Gareth himself, on the other hand, enjoys many successes over his lifetime. He grows to not only reach his maximum length of 28 centimeters, but his maximum weight too, a nice healthy 120 grams. And by the time he perishes, he will have attained the ancient age of 5 years old. And we will leave you
I'm
on
just
on that note. Thankfully, not killed by a predator this time.
Yeah.
I did set it up so that you couldn't die too many ways. You have successfully made it. I mean, you didn't make it out of the egg, but then we switched
No.
universe, and now you've made it to old age. So it's good.
I'm picturing the way that sort of reads. I'm picturing the end of Walking with Dinosaurs episodes where you hear the sad violin music as the animal's just lying there dying.
Yeah.
Kenneth Branagh giving the narration. Yeah,
Kenneth Branagh. Yeah, I forget that you did the narration there. Legend.
that was good.
Yeah, so I think that they are. They could be very, and I have in the past just written them off as colourful bearded dragons, but I think they're special.
Yeah.
I maybe I think the whole package is special. That animal in that habitat in that area of the world with those animals around it doing the things that it does is very special. I think.
The more I learn about the wildlife and the habitats of the whole of the US actually, the more I'm interested in it. To be honest, for the longest time, I always felt of it as sort of like European wildlife just dialed up to 12 or something,
Yeah.
But it's considerably different from what we have because it's been on its own continent for millions of years.
Yeah, it's one of those weird ones where it's kind of same but different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But different enough, and the more that you learn, it's the subtle differences as well.
Yeah.
It's when you learn about all the little subtle differences, that's what I think makes it. So yeah,
Yeah.
like American badgers and coyotes working together to find food, stuff like that. Burrowing owls, existing in the same burrows as them, and things like that.
That's right. Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
really
they're
cool
really
animals.
Cool animal.
And yeah, this is another one that I think adds to it as well.
Well, I'm glad I brought you around to enjoy
Just like them. I just they hadn't really piqued my interest, but they have now. So
Yeah, good.
Should we move into this week's emails?
Let's do it.
Bing! You've got mail. Ooh, it's an email.
Right, well, we're into this week's emails. I'm going to start things off with last week's question, which was, what do you think is the oddest looking creature to have ever existed and why? Now, there's some interesting ones that have come up from this. So I'll start off with Catherine Ames. Got to be one of the ones from the Burgess Shale. So the Cambrian animals, maybe Hallucigenia. I did say Hallucigenia, actually.
You did, I remember.
Do I really need to say why? No, you don't, because Hallucigenia is an odd-looking creature.
Spencer Seams comes to us with cephalopods by far. They are so smart and look like aliens. I know they are carbon-based, but nothing else that big looks that unearthly. I've got to agree with him there. Actually, they are weird-looking creatures.
That and they've got donut-shaped brains.
Yeah, and weird pupils.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got it all. So Christopher Ackerson has put Paleoloxodon cyproites, or any of the dwarf elephants, really. The Sicilian dwarf elephant. No,
no, the one from Cyprus. Cypriots.
But yeah, any of those dwarf elephants is pretty cool. You're gonna have to explain the context behind this one.
So Drew Owens, our very own Drew Owens, has said, Mr. Blobby, long may he reign. And Spencer Seams has reacted with an angry face to it. And that pretty much sums up Mr. Blobby, really. Like,
interesting creature. What would happen is Mr. Blobby would come on and essentially assault people.
Yeah.
But because he was in a large pink rubber costume and threw himself around like some sort of drunk, it was somehow more acceptable. But he would literally assault people in some of those situations quite badly.
It's the worst case of acne I've ever seen.
Anyway, moving swiftly on.
Did I just quickly? Did I ever tell you my crinkly bottom story?
Oh, I don't know. It sounds like a medical condition.
Sounds like I've been in the bath too long.
Yep.
So crinkly bottom, as I suggested, it was on a zoo. So,
yeah.
Cricket St Thomas, and every year, me and my mates, and once we were driving, we'd go off to Longley. And I said, just for a change, let's go Cricket St Thomas. You guys been Cricket St Thomas? They used to have a Jaguar there. I wonder if it's still there, right? So we drove all the way to Cricket St Thomas, only to find that Cricket St Thomas doesn't exist anymore. We were there trying to find where this zoo was. It closed like like ages, like years and years before.
You were just
Well,
just
there we
so
go.
close to being there.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So Josh Pickett has said has to be the reconstruction of Tullymonstrum gregarium, aka the Tully monster, which is the other one I think I said, which is a really cool species to go with because is it an invertebrate? Is it a vertebrate? No one can make their mind up. So it's a weird looking creature.
So Rennington says, as to answer this week's question, the most odd extant species has to go to the. I don't believe we didn't think of this. The platypus.
Yeah,
That is super odd.
yeah, it's pretty odd.
Part duck, part beaver, part whatever. Combining a bunch of unique adaptations. As for extinct, he's switched it up. It goes to the from the Cambrian as an alien-like world that was millions of years ago.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it's about as odd as the one that's even odder is the Ediacaran period, which is before that. So yeah.
Yeah. So Rosaline 9961 they say for this week's question of what's the oddest looking creatures to have existed, I'll preface now, might be a bit of a tame answer. It's the first thing that came to my
Squirrel.
mind. Squirrel, yeah. And with me currently moving, I'm surprised I was able to think of an answer. I'm going with long. I don't know how to pronounce this one.
Longest squama. Yeah.
Longisquama, a creature that looks, for the most part, like a regular lizard, but it has these odd spine-like protrusions on the back half of the creature.
Do you know what it looks like? So,
I'm not
did
sure.
you ever watch Primeval? Like, this is probably the best way that most people are unaware of it. The TV series that was basically like Rip in Time would open, and you'd have all these different animals come through.
Yeah, the one he built in the park.
No, that
Nigel
was
Marvin.
that was the premise for that. Came like Primeval came off of that same sort of thing. So it's the same people who did Walking with Dinosaurs, Prehistoric Park, all of those sort of things.
Right. Okay. Oh no, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah.
So in that, well, the first things, or what, like the little mascot creature that you have throughout the entire thing is a Longisquama.
Right.
Although they make this thing out to be iguana sized in sort of size, and they give it the ability of gliding like a Draco Valens lizard, which they're not sure of whether it would have been able to do that, and it's probably unlikely. But they have these weird, like almost like hockey sticks on their back that stick up, probably as a display function.
At all.
But yeah, it's a very odd but cool-looking creature.
Well, Rosie continues, especially because I've never seen a rendition of the creature with sail tissue. The naked spines are an interesting look. Also, thank you for enjoying my long-winded and artsy responses. I enjoy dabbling in writing, and I like to try and make my answers feel like sort of a conversation. Well, you certainly achieved that. Yeah, it's very, very, very nice answers.
So, this week, I've got to preface this with, I messed up. I messed up. It is basically because I thought Aaron was going to do an episode that is going to happen.
Involved a mustelid.
Yes, so I won't ruin what mustelid it is, but Aaron's next episode will be on a mustelid, which is the weasel family. So I thought, well, this is perfect. I will throw this one in, and then realised when I got here today to record that we weren't doing that one.
I asked him, did you get the creature feature wrong, or did I get it wrong? Because I've written about something very different.
Yeah. So anyway, it's all good because it's still an interesting topic, I feel. So this week's question is, what's your favourite member of the weasel family, the mustelids? Now, I will also say that we will accept members of the badgers and skunks into this, even though they're technically not nestled within the exact same thing. Skunks are in their own group and more closely related to badgers, but you know they're all kind of generally in that same family.
Yeah.
So what is your favourite mustelid?
Oh, easy. Tayra.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I really like Tayra. It's the first mustelid I ever worked with. Most people, their first mustelid is something like a ferret or a polecat or something like that. And mine was a Tayra, and he was built like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was awesome.
You know what? I'm one of those most people, because the first first mustelid I ever worked with was oh no, actually no. First mustelid I ever worked with was Asian small clawed otters.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I never even got my hands on a ferret until coming back to the UK. So yeah, but that doesn't mean they're my favourite, because otters they're interesting, I suppose. They're interesting,
Yeah.
but I think, I don't know. My heart lies more with proper wild polecats.
Yeah.
But I think it's, for me, it's got to go to the pine marten, or see, honey badgers are pretty cool as well.
Yeah, honey badgers are cool, but also like
I think any badger is pretty cool, and I haven't even gone into the stink badgers. And
wolverines are cool.
yeah, wolverines as well. I'm gonna just say pine marten, just to nail one of them down for the moment.
I have to say, if I was to choose a second place, it would be an extremely close second place, and it would be joint between pine marten and polecat.
Yeah.
But Taylor just about ekes it out.
See, American
be-
badgers as well. Those
American
are
badgers are
awesome looking things.
Yeah.
And they got attitude as well. They've got the same sort of attitude that like a honey badger has, but not as much, I think. Or maybe they don't have the
They got the attitude,
infamy
yeah.
that a honey badger does.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go honey badger. Honey badger.
Honey badger,
So
okay.
basically, there's not many animals that can take being bitten, stung, poisoned, attacked by a lion, and still be like, yeah, I'm fine, all right, what's going on? Yeah, come on. Yeah, there's not many animals that can do that. So
No.
let us know what your favorite member of the weasel family is, and put that in the comments down below on either our Facebook page or on our YouTube page, wherever that'll be going up. And that brings us neatly into our emails and correspondence. Do we have any this week, Eric?
We do. We've got one email and one YouTube correspondence. So
Aha.
we'll start with YouTube because I'm already on that page. So this one comes to us from Rennington, and they've said to provide a secondary opinion on the straws as someone who still uses them. So
yeah, I mean, we slagged off paper straws.
you upset?
I don't care.
One week, like a few weeks ago, and now I've absolutely slated people that use straws.
Well, I did the same, so I still remain the same on it. I don't think you need a straw to have a drink, but to each their own.
Fair enough. As someone who still uses them until the paper withers up and drinks it out the cup, I find paper straws give me a tiny amount of joy. However, plastic straws are still way too much of an ecological issue to want to change such a tiny aspect of life.
Yes, yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. Yeah,
fair. Maybe I did go a little bit overboard in my bashing of people that still use straws. Because clearly there are people over the age of 6 that use them. But I am very passionately.
You're backpedaling now.
No, I'm very passionately anti-straw and notoriously anti-balloon as well.
Oh, yeah, don't get me started on balloons.
Yeah, my rant on balloons is pretty much every other word is a expletive curse word. We'd never get it past our family-friendly algorithms. Family-friendly for the most part, I suppose. So our email comes to us from Chris Ackerson, who has corrected us on the pronunciation of his surname. Which, thank you for that. And actually, side note, if we're mispronouncing anyone's names, please let us know. It's very important to us, especially as someone called Aaron, who has been called Aaron his entire life. It's very important to get people's names correct. Do you know, when I make phone calls and people ask me my name, I say, it's Aaron, spelled Aaron. They go, okay, Aaron. No. I've literally just said Aaron to you. Literally just said Aaron to you.
They could go, Aaron. Aaron, yeah.
Anyway, tangent. Chris Ackerson says, hello, gents. I was reading an article which I thought was just up your alley. The article is called Bison Ranchers Return Thousands of Animals to Native Lands and Witness Total Rejuvenization of Ecosystem. I found it on the Good News Network, which we use today. Yeah. That's cool. I have a link at the bottom. Anyway, it was interesting in the fact that it was it was supporting bison reintroduction into their native habitats. That is good. But B, it was doing so in part to produce bison meat for the butcher shop.
Nice.
To be fair, it does not look like they are proposing large farms or anything like that. An added complication is this is in part a goal of native groups, I think. I thought it would be interesting to get your thoughts on this. I'm not sure what I think of this, but I'm looking to dive deeper into the subject. Aside, you've been mispronouncing my last name. It's somewhat funny. Most Americans think there's a T in my name, and you guys pronounce it differently. No worries, it's pronounced Akasun. Thank you and kind regards. So, Chris, thank you for correcting us on your name. Like I said, it's really important. And two, thank you for that link.
Yeah.
We're going to. We don't have the scope to read it now and give
I
our
think maybe
thoughts
you
on
should
it.
you could do that as the main article for next week.
That's what I'll do. Yeah, I'll do this as the main article for next week. And if you read it as well,
Yeah.
and we can both give some thoughts on it because we love that. In fact, that whale swallowing the kayaker
Yeah.
that we had in the news, I was gonna read it to you. Said you got it, but my mum had actually sent that in to me. And Louise O'Leary often sends stuff into us. So
Yes.
so if you ever have things that you want us to talk about, do send them in. Let's say on the surface, just what he's written here. What do you think?
Oh no, I think that's the ideal situation with things like this is you're getting the area rejuvenated by having a native species back in its native habitat, and it's not like overpopulating that area would be an issue because the original reports of people, like going into these areas when the bison numbers were strong were bison as far as the eye could see.
Yeah, they're
So
huge
clearly you're
herds.
not going to overgraze the land by keeping it how they would naturally, and it's producing high quality meat for people to use and to buy. Obviously it's not a factory farm and you're probably not going to get anywhere near the quantities of things like that, but it's providing that source of income for the people who are doing it to be able to make a living off it. So yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, we've not read it yet, so I will withhold our full views on it till next week when we've read it. But on the surface of what you're saying, it's good. I've always wondered if there was a better way of farming. In the UK, we tend to do a lot of kind of intense farming, isn't there? Some cattle in the UK don't ever touch grass; they're just in barns the whole time, and fed on basically cattle gruel, I suppose. Is the way to describe it. That's probably a bit of an unfair way of describing it, but as basic a description as I can give of it. There's still a lot of cows that do go out at pasture and stuff, but a lot of kind of like supermarket kind of meats and stuff.
Well,
comes
it's
from that.
factory farming,
And I have always wondered if there was a better way of using native ungulate species,
which would be the red deer
red deer,
and the roe deer, and that's about it.
And if they were kind of wild managed, ranched. You could have them especially with bison in America. You could have those in massive, numerous herds and be picking off enough, but yet breeding enough and taking care of them enough to sustain them. But then there are complications. There's the relationship between the bison and the natives, which is very tentative, especially as the settler Americans damn near wiped out the bison in an effort to wipe out the native Native Americans. And also, I mean, when you're doing that kind of thing, you've got to tread a careful relationship with the local predators to not upset the environmental balance that way. But yeah, we'll give it a read and we'll talk about it next week.
I think that neatly brings us into our Patreons. So let's have a quick look at our Patreons.
Every week, we like to give a little love back by shouting out the names of our wonderful Patreon supporters.
That's right. These are the cupboard dwellers who are kind enough to support us through a monetary contribution, for which we are eternally grateful and grateful beyond words.
And those people are, of course, Fogtober, Jen Greenhall, Connie P, Chelsea McKee, Nick to Nick,
Owen Cox,
and Matt Geddy.
Guys, your financial contributions are actively helping us out here in the Natural History Cupboard in a myriad of ways, including developing our new studio, planning excursions and being able to go out and film on location, considering technical upgrades, and actually making the jump from a solely audio-based podcast to the now growing YouTube channel. And we really can't thank you enough for that.
Now, we appreciate all of our cupboard dwellers and the support you offer us through listening, liking, sharing, and subscribing. But if you feel we've earned it and you're considering joining our Patreon, there are two options through which you can do so.
That's the Nature Nerds and the Animal Ambassador tiers, which you can find on the Patreon website or links through our social media as well, and each one having different benefits for you to enjoy.
And now back to Gareth and Erin in the studio.
And a massive thank you there to our Patrons for their continued support. But that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it does.
Yeah, big thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I survived. And a big thank you to you at home. And we'll see you next time here in the Natural History Cupboard. Bye.
Bye. What kind of lizard tells jokes?
Don't know.
A stand-up comedian.
No.
Well,
What's the deal with that?
I wanted to write a longer lizard joke, but just thought it would dragon.
I like that one.